All the latest now this Friday night with the ITV News at 10.
Business leaders issue a stark warning to the government to take action on the energy crisis to prevent damage to key industries. They say it must be taken now or there could be closures in weeks. The government says it's listening but has no answers yet.
I cannot rule out, I'm afraid, that one or two of them will be forced to suspend production as a result of those increased costs.
Also in News at 10 tonight. A special investigation into the fate of hunting dogs once their working life is over. The pig farmers going out of business because of labour shortages. The Ashes are back on. It will go ahead in Australia, but only subject to strict conditions. And back in the limelight and back on the tennis court, Emma Raducanu on her first tournament since that fairy tale in New York.
I've always wanted to play the best in the world week in, week out, so I'm here doing that and I just feel grateful to play.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. We've learned this week that the soaring cost of energy is likely to go on hurting millions of households until well into next year. But the government was told in no uncertain terms today that the implications of the crisis could go even wider and deeper. The bosses of some of Britain's biggest energy-intensive manufacturers, including producers of steel, glass, ceramics and paper, met the Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng today. And they told him that unless something's done, and done urgently, about the price of wholesale gas, factories up and down the country could soon be forced to shut down production. The risks, they said, are very, very real and could affect everything from manufacturing to what people can buy in the shops.
There are a number of industries which rely heavily on affordable energy. And with gas prices rising so drastically, some are now openly saying they're struggling. Today, the government met with industry leaders from those who use large amounts of energy, and they all had a similar message. Without urgent intervention, factories in their sector could have to suspend work.
I cannot rule out, I'm afraid, that one or two of them will be forced to suspend production as a result of those increased costs.
If the government doesn't take any action, then basically what we'll see for the steel sector is more and more pauses of production in certain times of the day, and those pauses will become longer.
We probably only have days with a number of companies to make a significant difference.
For these industries, rising energy prices means it is more and sometimes too expensive to produce products. Today, the Labour leader, while visiting a Kellogg's cereal factory in Manchester, piled on the pressure, criticising the government's handling of the crisis.
On energy, they've been warned over many years about the gas storage that we needed, and they let it go. They were warned that nuclear was stalling, not going quickly enough, and warned about diversification. So this is a government that tries to govern in slogans, but is finding that the failure to plan is hitting working people up and down the country.
The price of gas has soared because demand, since economies around the world have opened up post-pandemic, has outstripped supply. It means for some, like Anne Harmon, energy bills have increased quite significantly. Today, Ofgem, the industry regulator, warned people should expect even higher bills next spring when the current price cap is reviewed. For those like Anne, it means no choice but making cutbacks to get by.
Probably food and, haven't had holidays, but clothing just cut down. And I also help my son with his bills as well. So it's going to be a kind of a knock-on effect, not just for me and my family, but for his family as well.
The government says protecting consumers is their top priority, and that they are also listening to the concerns that have been raised by major industries.
And Shihab is here with me in the studio. So Shihab, the obvious question is there a solution in sight for both sides?
Well, the government released a statement after the end of that meeting where they said they were determined to secure a competitive future for all of those industries and at the same time promised to work with them to mitigate the consequences of what's going on at the moment. As you heard in that report, wholesale gas prices going up is affecting the way those businesses run, and they are concerned. Now, I spoke to several sources who were at that meeting. Some were unhappy with what they felt was a reaction from the government that they felt wasn't serious enough. They felt they were being directed towards the Treasury. They were told, oh, this is the Chancellor's problem, it's not for the Business Secretary. On the other side, I spoke to other sources that gave me the exact opposite review of how the meeting went. They said they were happy with what they felt was urgency from the government. They're going to now be submitting proposals about what they think are solutions. But this is tough ideologically for the government. We know the Conservative government doesn't particularly like intervening in markets. They say in their statement that they would prefer a competitive future. But the longer this goes on, the more we hear about factories potentially having to close production for periods of time, the more concerns are raised about steel, for example, about jobs potentially being under threat because of this, the more pressure there is on the government to try and intervene. They are confident that this will eventually blow over. But those I spoke to, those in the industry, they don't really share that belief. They've been saying that they think this might be a long-term problem and they need solutions now. This is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We've already been talking about it for weeks. I think we'll be talking about it for some time moving forward too.
We may well do. Shab, thank you very much indeed. Now, the footage we are about to show you has never been seen publicly before, but it is apparently accepted practice in some British hunting circles. We've obtained films showing dogs used for hunting being shot by huntsmen at their kennels when they are deemed too old or too unwell to work as pack hounds. The footage shared with ITV News was secretly filmed by two anti-hunting groups who say what's taking place is unacceptable. It should be said that the practice is not illegal, and the hunt concerned say the hounds are only shot if there is no other option. You may, though, be upset by the scenes.
A hunting hound is about to be put down. Nothing like this has been filmed before. For many, it is controversial. The member of the prestigious Beaufort Hunt staff eventually gets the dog into position before lining up the pistol and pulling the trigger. A few moments later, the hound is taken away, still moving. In another video, a hound has to be shot twice, 3 minutes apart. For those responsible for bringing this footage into the public domain, the videos are disturbing.
These hounds are nothing but working animals to this hunt. They're tools, and when they're not fit for purpose, not strong enough, not fit enough to keep up with the pack, they're brutally shot in the head and killed and thrown away like garbage. And it's utterly disgusting. It's morally indefensible.
Hunting hounds are hard-working, and as the Beaufort Hunt told us, managing the end of their life is not as simple as it seems. Occasionally, hounds are successfully retired as domestic pets, but they are not house-trained and have only ever been used to living in a pack environment. So the majority are unfortunately unsuitable for rehoming. Where other options are not available, hounds are humanely euthanased. One MP told us she thinks an injection to end life might be a better option.
I don't understand why a dog, albeit I recognise these are defined as working dogs, needs to be euthanased in this way. And I'm sure that there are much more compassionate ways of putting a dog to sleep.
Of course, many people will see this footage as being shocking, but perhaps that's because we as a society have become entirely desensitised to some of the realities of rural life.
Hunt supporters think it helps to see hunting hounds as working animals.
Like a farmer with livestock, they have to look after them at that scale, and that means taking really difficult decisions. It means doing that horrible job at the end of their working lives.
But a vet we showed the footage to disputes that hunting hounds are somehow closer to livestock than domestic pets, and he believes the system needs greater regulation.
Well, that's completely inaccurate. Hounds are dogs, and therefore they should be regulated as dogs. And when they're commercial, there should be full veterinary involvement for health and welfare.
Animal welfare campaigners, including celebrity Ricky Gervais, are appalled. He told us, It is so deeply upsetting that foxhounds are trained to hunt foxes, and when they catch them, rip them to pieces. Then they are killed, usually by a shot to the head. Both the hound and the fox become the victim of this cruelty. It's insane. Having seen now for the first time how hunting hounds are put down, the debate is whether this is the way to do it. Rupert Evelyn, News at 10, Gloucestershire.
The job of rebuilding public trust in the Metropolitan Police after the horrific murder of Sarah Everard is a big one, and today's Forces Chief, Dame Cressida Dick, revealed who will spearhead that task. She announced that Baroness Casey of Blackstock will lead an independent review of the Met's practices and culture after Wayne Couzens was able to use his authority as a serving officer in the force to carry out the murder. Baroness Casey served as the government's homelessness czar and was also the UK's first Victims Commissioner. Doling out the annual flu jab to millions of patients is always a major undertaking, but that's even more the case this year. The NHS launched its biggest ever flu vaccination programme today, with more than 35 million people in England alone eligible to get it. Health bosses fear a double winter whammy of flu and coronavirus could push the health service to breaking point. Millions of COVID boosters are also being offered.
Here there is a new meaning to getting double jabbed. A flu vaccine in one arm and a COVID booster in the other.
And if you just want to press here for me.
This winter, more people than ever are being offered a free flu jab, amid warnings COVID and flu could prove a deadly double threat. At this clinic, the extra protection is welcome.
Two for the price of one. It's great to get it done. I don't have to come all the way back or anywhere else, and it's marvellous.
We couldn't get here fast enough to get our COVID-19 or our flu vaccinations.
More than 40 million people across the UK are eligible for a free flu jab in the largest ever campaign of its kind. Those being offered it include the over 50s, pregnant women, and for the first time, secondary school children up to the age of 16 who get a nasal spray. This drive comes as experts warn that deaths from flu could reach up to 60,000, making this winter more than twice as deadly as the last serious outbreak.
We routinely see a strain skipping a year quite often. It becomes dominant in a subsequent year. But I think one of the concerns we have this year is because people haven't had the opportunity to build up immunity from a previous season where we've had very low rates, there's the possibility of having multi-strains, so a number of different strains circulating at the same time.
Viruses are released into the air when people infected with flu or COVID-19 breathe out, speak.
In England, this new film explains that the flu virus can be fatal to older and more vulnerable patients, while getting a flu jab could prevent further pressure on an already stretched NHS.
For doctors and nurses, prevention is always better than the cure, always. I think general practice will be able to deliver the flu vaccine campaign as planned, and we're very much dedicated to delivering that. We have got enormous workload pressures at the moment, bigger than ever in my career.
Latest figures show almost 7,000 people are in UK hospitals with COVID. A surge in winter flu cases could push the health service to the limit. Martha Fairley, News at 10.
Wales has been promised a much more normal Christmas this year if the pandemic doesn't worsen again between now and then. The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, said today if nothing unexpected happens, Wales can look forward to a holiday season much more like the ones we are used to. He said the Welsh Government does have a plan in place should hospitalisations rise, but there is no suggestion right now that it will need to be used. We heard earlier that the latest gloomy predictions about the energy crisis. So on the face of it, people might take heart from today's news that a widely respected business figure has been appointed as the nation's advisor on that other crisis, shortages. But given the job that fixing Britain's supply chain problems to the former chief executive of Tesco, Sir Dave Lewis, came too late for some of those affected by them. We visited a pig farm in Suffolk who, after 50 years in the business, feels his only choice is to cull his entire livestock and retire.
They are only a few minutes old, and as we film, they multiply.
6, 8, 10, 12.
She's got 12.
Over the past 52 years, Peter has reared hundreds of thousands of pigs on this farm, but this litter will be one of the very last.
This is my service house. This used to have 50 or 60 sows in here, as you can see at the moment. That's empty apart from 7 sows which are waiting to go to slaughter.
This is what's left of Peter's breeding herd. He's already sent more than 100 sows to slaughter because producing pigs, he says, is now costing rather than making him money.
Well, pig prices are going down every week at the present moment. The feed that we use is going up every week, and across the country we've got a labour shortage, and it's just not sustainable.
There are about 1,200 pigs on this farm, all of them being reared for meat. But right now, for every pig that Peter produces, he's making a loss of between £10 and £15.
The whole industry is crying out for help. Earlier this week, the National Pig Association said that at least 600 healthy pigs have been slaughtered on British farms because of a backlog caused by a shortage of abattoir workers. Peter also can't get the staff he needs and blames Brexit.
Because we haven't had the Eastern Europeans coming over here, and the government has now set these high qualifications that they've got to have to come and work here, when we all know you can't all have a degree. We put an advertisement in the local paper, and I got nobody apply at all. To think this all got to be a ghost town after I built the farm 50 years ago, I'm now going to get around to knocking it down. It's been a very hard pill to stomach at times.
The government told us it understands the challenges the pig industry has faced over the past few months and says it's doing what it can to make it more attractive to UK workers. But for Peter, it is too little too late. By spring, the business he built half a century ago will be finished, and these pig pens will be empty and quiet. Chloe Keedy, News at 10, Suffolk.
Now, it is rare that the political establishment across the United Kingdom finds itself speaking with one voice, but so it was today in tributes paid to the former Minister James Brokenshire, who has died from lung cancer at the young age of 53. He was a non-smoker. Boris Johnson summed up the sadness felt by many when he called Mr Brokenshire the nicest, kindest and most unassuming of politicians.
One of the nicest men in politics, James Brokenshire. For years as a minister, he was a great prop to Theresa May when she was Prime Minister. Demoted by Boris Johnson, he was equally loyal to him. But more than anything else, he was a family man, devoted to his wife Cathy and 3 children, who announced he died in hospital yesterday, almost 4 years after being diagnosed with lung cancer.
I'm now focused on getting through this next phase, meeting this new challenge.
So typically brave and cheerful earlier this year when this non-smoker learned the terrible disease had returned. 3 Prime Ministers paid tribute to him. David Cameron said he was devastated to hear the heartbreaking news that James Brokenshire has died well before his time. Theresa May said he was an outstanding public servant, a talented minister and a loyal friend. Boris Johnson said James was the nicest, kindest and most unassuming of politicians, but also extraordinarily effective. And this from colleagues.
In all the jobs that he took, he wasn't really trying to shine a light on himself. He was trying to get the job done and serve the nation.
As well as being a very successful and effective politician, James was also really great fun. I'm not going to tell you about all the antics in our wine tasting club, for example.
I saw him just 3 weeks ago for dinner, and he was obviously very unwell, but he was in his usual great spirits. He was someone who loved to laugh. We were bopping around his kitchen to Nicki Minaj.
Brokenshire was in the cabinet during perhaps the most chaotic period in modern political history, when Theresa May was struggling to get Brexit done and to cling on to her job. I interviewed him at the height of the crisis when more than a third of Tory MPs voted for her to quit. He'd have none of it. It's not a great result, is it?
No, I think there is a clear majority that now allows the Prime Minister to move forward.
He loved baking and laughed when he was attacked on social media for having 4 ovens. And his devotion to his constituents was well beyond the norm, says Graham Brown, whose daughter Charlie was killed in a speedboat crash.
The compassion and support James gave the family saw us through our crisis. We just would never have got through the crisis without James's support.
tributes to former Conservative MP James Brokenshire, who has died at the age of 53. A senior judge revealed today exactly why he recommended that the government should investigate further the circumstances surrounding the Omagh bombing atrocity. 29 people, including a woman pregnant with twins, were killed when the real IRA terror group detonated its bomb in the centre of Omagh in August 1998. Families hope today's detailed findings will make the government think again about its refusal to hold a public inquiry.
It was the bloodiest final episode of the 30 years of carnage known as the Troubles, a savage blow just after the Good Friday Agreement had given everybody hope. 29 people, including 6 children, 6 teenagers and a woman pregnant with twins, were murdered when 200 kilos of explosives ripped through a busy street in Omagh one August Saturday in 1998. The nihilistic work of dissident Republicans, the real IRA. Aidan Gallagher was just 21 years old when the bombers killed him. Today his father finally heard details of the intelligence failings which could have prevented the attack as part of the family's attempts to get a public inquiry.
The judge made it clear that there were factors that need to be considered. There are still questions that need to be answered with regard to the Omagh bomb. And also in the summing up, it was indicated that the police were politically leaned on in order not to pursue the people that was carrying out those bombings in the lead up to Omagh.
Today, Mr Justice Horner accepted 4 grounds submitted by Mr Gallagher for a fresh investigation into the bombing. They included claims a tip-off from an informer about a planned attack were not acted on because the man building the bomb was also an intelligence mole. The judge said the authorities may have decided against a security crackdown because they were worried it might destabilise the nascent peace process. He also agreed there were failures to act on surveillance and mobile phone data gathered by GCHQ, which could have linked Omagh suspects to other bombings leading up to the atrocity. And he also upheld a claim that police were not given all information on suspects held by the Royal Ulster Constabulary Special Branch. 4 men suspected of involvement in the bombing have already been successfully sued in a civil case where they were found liable for the attack, but no one has ever been found guilty in a criminal court. 23 years after the worst atrocity of the Troubles, the families of those who perished in Omagh are still waiting for answers to key questions about the lead up to the bombing and what could have been done to prevent it. They hope today's judgment will put pressure on the government to help them get to the truth. The government said it will carefully consider the full judgment, but 23 years on, the full facts of the worst atrocity Northern Ireland endured are only just beginning to come to light. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Belfast.
There was more carnage in Afghanistan today when a bomb tore through a mosque packed with worshippers. The Shiite congregation of the mosque in the northern city of Kunduz had gathered for Friday noon prayers when the bomb went off, killing at least 46 people. The Islamic State terror group said the attack, claimed the attack by one of its suicide bombers had targeted both Shiites and the country's Taliban rulers. In a rare move, the Nobel Peace Prize was today jointly awarded to 2 journalists standing up for freedom of speech, Dmitry Muratov from Russia and Maria Ressa from the Philippines. Both risked the anger of their respective countries' governments by daring to hold those in power to account. The citation said the award honoured both their courageous work and that of all the other journalists who tried to uphold this ideal. A technical glitch has hit Facebook and Instagram for a second time in a week. Thousands of users of the social media platforms have again been unable to access or refresh their home pages from about 8 o'clock tonight onwards. Facebook, which owns both and WhatsApp, which was affected in Monday's major break-in service, has apologized for what it calls a maintenance error rather than any malicious activity. Now, after weeks of not knowing whether this winter's Ashes cricket tour to Australia will go ahead, it was given the green light today, a provisional green light at least. Schedule is here, and this all hinges on Australia's strict COVID entry rules. What does that mean?
Yes, Rageh, as you know, it's one of cricket's oldest and fiercest rivalries, steeped in history and the pinnacle of Test cricket. And for England, it's about regaining the Ashes after Australia retained them in 2019. But for months, there's been question mark hanging over the series due in December. England players particularly concerned about their families being able to join them because they'll be away for Christmas. And it's all down to, as you say, Australia's strict COVID-19 rules. The borders are still closed to foreign nationals, and there is strict quarantine in place where even residents can't cross state borders. And yet these 5 tests are due to be played in 5 separate states, each with their own rules. The negotiations have been reported to be tense, but there seems to be a breakthrough tonight. The England and Wales Cricket Board saying the series will go ahead, but subject to several critical conditions, reported to be about entry into Australia, which has said it plans to open its international borders from November, but not to foreign nationals, and no one will be given special treatment. But it seems confident enough that people will be able to travel in December. The ECB saying it aims to resolve these outstanding matters in the coming days.
That's exciting development in an important sport for this winter. Thank you, Sejal. A disastrous own goal meant that Wales could only come away with a point from their tough World Cup qualifier against the Czech Republic tonight. With Gareth Bale out injured, Aaron Ramsey was captain in Prague and he scored the first of Wales' 2 goals. But Ramsey also contributed to an own goal by the Wales keeper Danny Ward. The 2-2 draw means Wales remain 3rd in their group, though they have a game in hand. Finally, if winning the US Open and the whirl of events that followed must have seemed like a dream to Emma Raducanu, well, this day, to coin a well-known phrase, marks the first day of the rest of her life. All eyes will be on Britain's young tennis star as she steps out on court in California in just a few hours' time for her first tournament since that remarkable fairy tale victory in New York.
The Brits take center stage as Andy Murray and Emma Raducanu headline Day 3 of the BNP Paribas Open.
Tournaments around the world are relishing Raducanu's breakthrough, and she's been hard at practice here. No longer unknown, this time she is seeded and ready for what's ahead.
I love being on tour. I've always wanted to play the best in the world week in, week out, so I'm here doing that, and I just feel grateful to play such amazing places like here. I mean, it's completely different to the lower level tournaments that I would play before. So yeah, everything's just such a new experience and great.
Changed everything and made the 18-year-old a media sensation. But after enjoying the glamour of galas and those movie red carpets, it's back to work with the same sense of enjoyment that won her fans around the world.
Just keep having fun with it. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I've been given, and it's worked so much. And when I enjoy my tennis, then it really shows through the shots and my game.
Her emergence as a new superstar is just what tennis needed at all levels. Young players are quickly adopting her as a new role model. So do you have a favourite new player?
Yes, Emma Raducanu. She's not much older than me. I'd never seen her before, and out of nowhere she comes and wins the US Open, which is insane.
Emma Raducanu's carefree attitude and that fairy tale in New York has taken women's tennis by storm. No wonder there's such anticipation about tonight's match. She is up against the Belarusian Alexandra Sasnovich, a former top 30 player, and a good test as Raducanu now hits the main tour on a full-time basis. Long-time tennis observers will be watching the match closely.
It'll be a big moment for her. I mean, of course, she's been on the biggest stage now at the US Open, but this will be a continuation of that. Was that sort of just a one-time burst of greatness, or can she sustain this for a long time? I think we'll sort of get our first taste of what direction that's going to go, maybe tonight or in this tournament.
So in just a few hours' time, the eyes of the tennis world will again be on the teenager from Bromley. Robert Moore, News at 10, in Indian Wells in California.
All eyes on Emma Raducanu, as always. That's all from me tonight. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend. Good night.